On this vote, the ayes are 34, the noes are 16.
The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to.
The bill passed through committee 34-16, a move celebrated by Congressman Jackson on X, who said South Africa had made its choice when it abandoned America and its allies and sided with communists and terrorists.
South Africa has enjoyed a rich partnership with the United States, particularly in terms of trade, counterterrorism cooperation, and global health. Recently, however, South Africa has abandoned America and our allies and increasingly aligned itself with our adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, and Iranian military proxies like Hamas. My bill, the U.S.-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act, will provide the President and the Secretary of State with the tools needed to conduct a full review of the U.S.-South Africa bilateral relationship and determine whether South Africa has engaged in activities that undermine United States national security or foreign policy interest. In addition, my bill will give the Trump administration the authorities needed to identify and sanction corrupt officials of the ANC and continue to align with China, Iran, Russia, and have abandoned the United States in the process.
The legislation followed President Trump's executive order in February cutting off aid to South Africa, highlighting its foreign policy positions, including its accusation of genocide against Israel at the International Court of Justice, while creating a refugee program for white Afrikaners in the main.
This is a targeted and overdue response to troubling shifts in South Africa's foreign policy under the African National Congress. Let me be clear that this bill is not anti-South Africa, it is pro-accountability. For too long, we've watched a key partner drift closer to authoritarian regimes, conducting joint military drills with Russia, strengthening economic and cybersecurity ties with the Kremlin and Beijing, and aligning with efforts to de-dollarize the global economy. These actions raise serious questions about the ANC's alignment with the democratic values and U.S. interests.
But South Africa was not without support.
South Africa acts as a leader, not only among African countries, but also on the world stage. As we have seen this year with the country's G20 presidency, we have a long history of partnership between our countries that I hope to see continue in the future, including with a successful handover as the United States assumes the G20 presidency next year. Unfortunately, this bill will not help to deepen or further that partnership. Instead, I believe it sets us down the wrong path with respect to our relationship with South Africa. South Africa has taken a number of foreign policy positions that I happen not to agree with. But in mature relations between countries, we can deal with those differences through diplomacy and dialogue. This legislation does just the opposite.
Meeks strongly opposed the legislation, calling it unnecessary given the earlier targeting of South Africa by the White House.
President Trump has already disproportionately targeted South Africa. He's done this by trying to embarrass President Ramaphosa in the Oval Office with faulty evidence of purported atrocities in the country, by instituting an executive order cutting all U.S. assistance to the country and putting it in a place where special refugee resettlement programs for Afrikaners. And at the same time, he's blocking the resettlement of literally all other refugees to the United States. Refugees fleeing genocide in Sudan, not allowed. Refugees fleeing Russian bombardments in Ukraine, not allowed. Refugees fleeing political persecution in Venezuela, not allowed. This is glaring hypocrisy. And I do not believe Congress should further enable or double down on President Trump's misguided approach. When we disagree with our partners, including on the continent of Africa, we should handle that responsibly by using diplomacy and presenting convincing arguments.
A similar bill to review the relationship between Pretoria and Washington did pass the Republican-led House last May during the last Congress, but was not taken up by the Democratic leadership of the Senate.
You won't believe what's happening between the United States and South Africa right now. A new bill, yes, an actual piece of U.S. legislation, just cleared a key hurdle in Washington that could seriously shake up relations between these two countries. It's called the U.S.-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act of 2025, and it's not just some symbolic gesture. This thing has teeth. Pushed forward by Republican Congressman Ronny Jackson, the bill recently passed through the powerful Foreign Affairs Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. That's a big deal. It's still early in the process. Laws in America don't pass overnight. But this is the first real step toward potentially changing how the U.S. treats South Africa diplomatically and economically. So what's the drama all about? Well, the bill is widely seen as a move to give President Donald Trump more tools, specifically the authority to impose sanctions. And not just any sanctions. We're talking about sanctions on South African government officials and even ANC members who are perceived to be cozying up to countries like China, Russia, and Iran, nations the U.S. has labeled strategic adversaries. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Washington has been watching Pretoria's foreign policy choices closely, especially its growing ties with the BRICS nations and its refusal to toe the Western line when it comes to global conflicts and trade dynamics. For the U.S., especially under a Trump administration, this is a red flag. Supporters of the bill say it's about holding allies accountable. Critics? They see it as political bullying, a way of punishing South Africa for having an independent foreign policy. Either way, it raises serious questions. Will South African leaders be targeted? Will it impact trade, visas, or diplomatic cooperation? One thing's for sure, this bill, even if it doesn't become law right away, signals a shift. The U.S. is watching South Africa more closely than ever, and the consequences could be huge. Keep an eye on this.